things are starting to heat up, and Spencer Stewart, who's the New York-based consultancy firm who is helping recruit the next boss, the replacement, of course, of Gillon McLachlan, is starting to call presidents, CEOs, industry figures, even media moguls like you, Eddie. I think you got a phone call. We'll get to that in a second, to ask them what is their opinion of the current candidates and who would they put forward. And we're starting to get a bit of a feel now. A shortlist is emerging. There's a lot of the names that you would think would be there. Maybe there's a couple you wouldn't. We're going to go through them individually. Old Dylan Gale, the chairman, or should I say the president of the Western Bulldogs, Kylie Watson-Wheeler, Patrick Delaney, who's the boss of Fox, Stuart Fox, former boss of Hawthorn, now at the MCC, and Tom Harley. We're going to go through them one by one because I'd be very surprised if one of these 7 names doesn't replace Gillon McLachlan at the end of the year. Travis Old in the box seat has been groomed for 2 years. Gillon McLachlan taking further step backs Richard Goyder, a huge fan of his, and did a lot through COVID, stepping up, the former boss of the Gold Coast Suns back in the early days. The other person that has leapt into equal favouritism, in my opinion, and speaking to other people, is, of course, Andrew Dillon. Long-time legal counsel, basically the number 2, now answerable to football. He's been at the AFL for nearly, in fact, more than 20 years, and he is seen as the absolute bolter in the pack that could be the next man. Brendan Gale, if you speak to anyone at Clubland, this man has to be the next AFL CEO. 244 games, we know he's a star as a player. Like Andrew Dimitru, also the boss of the AFL Players Association. He's now turned a club around in Richmond, $10 million of debt, and happened to win 3 flags and predicted it. Kylie Watson-Wheeler, a lot of our listeners and watchers might not know her. She is the president of the Bulldogs, happens to be the boss of Disney for Australia and New Zealand. They rate her so much, they want her to move this to the States and take on a more senior role. Huge plaudits on Kylie Watson-Wheeler, particularly her experience in broadcasting. Stuart Fox, now he was, of course, basically a triple premiership chief executive with the Hawthorn Football Club when they were winning that three-peat under Alistair Clarkson. He's now at the MCC. He's seen as a steady hand. He's a great delegator and very, very well liked within the industry. Whether he wants to do it or not is another question. Now, Patrick Delaney, this man, I think, his stocks have risen hugely over the last 3 or 4 weeks, particularly inside AFL House. Started as a digital director at Foxtel since in 2000, now basically runs the joint. A qualified lawyer, and he, I think, is a huge bolter, particularly in the eyes of Gillon McLachlan. Got a huge focus, of course, on media and broadcasting. He is based in Sydney. He's an NRL man. Does he know the AFL well enough? Does that matter? All valid questions moving forward. And the last one, as we move on, is Tom Harley. I think, Caro, you'll talk a little bit more about him. He's young, of course, a premiership captain in his own right with Geelong. He was football boss of Sydney, now the CEO, very well respected, highly revered with his peers, and basically seen as the next big thing as far as young CEO stars. They are the special 7. And I would be very surprised, based on the conversations I've been having in recent weeks, and particularly the last few days, as Spencer Stewart talks to senior industry people like you, Eddie, if that name, if one of those names, isn't the next boss of the AFL.
There we go.
Don't be tight-lipped over there, Eddie. They were calling you as well. What did you tell Spencer Stewart when they rang you up?
I didn't. I was involved in the process, and that's in camera.
Is there...
so you're not going to comment?
No.
Has Sam left anyone off that list,
look, I think there's still people from around. I don't know, but I know they're looking far and wide. It's not necessarily the individuals at the moment. It's the skill set they bring. And, you know, one of the things I would say publicly is this. If once they get down to who they want to get, then they have to fashion, I think, the commission and also other executives around them. So if you go for an Andrew Dillon, for example, you need to get some people maybe around him. The chairman might have to be a little bit more public in supporting him and other things. If you get Patrick Delaney, then you need to get some football people involved, AFL football people. Patrick, I know, thinks maybe he would be too Sydney. I spoke to him, not about this necessarily, but we're throwing it around one time. I said, what about you? As a few people have. But he is a guy, I mean, Patrick did the Olympic deal with Channel 9 back before 2000 with myself and David Gingell and Jeff Brown. And, he's, as you said, he's the head of Foxtel and was the head of Fox Sports before that.
Doesn't make him a great CEO of the AFL, though.
No, but
it would help to have a footy background, in my view.
But I think that one of the key issues going forward is football has to get its preeminence back in that senior office.
So you've touched base on that before. Is it a deeper structural change that's needed at the AFL?
I think so, yeah.
Roles, a creation of a role, that complementary team, more than just here's a man that's going to do everything.
Regardless, and this could be Andrew Dillon too, okay, so don't let me wipe anybody out here, but we've had the Dimitri and the McLachlan era that's come through, and they've been sensational, okay? Now it's time to have a look. I know some people are talking about we need to have a new Ross Oakley era, which was a football guy but came from outside. When Ross Oakley was appointed, everyone said, Ross who? What? And but he was fantastic
the Fitzroy people
in that era. Well, yeah, there was ups and downs and all that. But, you know, it is a big business that has to keep rolling. The TV rights are everything. But I think we've got to get people in as well who are strategising. So Tasmania's not just the biggest thing. We should be looking at land banking, all sorts of different things.
But back to the Ross Oakley, the hard decision.
Yeah.
The Fitzroy was one of the hardest decisions in the history of the game, but he made it.
Yeah.
And he was hated. And that's probably the point someone you're making can make those really hard decisions.
Ross, I think leadership, Sam, is massive. Tom Harley, people at Geelong talk about the fact that he was probably not even in their 10 best players, but what he did to transform that footy club. Obviously a much younger CEO than Brendan Gale, much newer into the role, but highly respected. Is the time right for him? I'm not sure. Maybe go for a younger candidate. Brendan Gale, equally with leadership, is revered at Richmond.
And by all his peers at other clubs as
and
well.
all the other clubs, who I think The Age did a survey of all the club bosses, and they said that they didn't think an internal candidate was the right choice. I mean, I think both Andrew Dillon and Travis Old have a lot to recommend them, but would Travis Old, for example, stay if Brendan Gale got the job?
Cara, you've got a good crystal ball with these situations usually. Who are you leaning towards?
I've always felt that Brendan Gale was the best candidate, but I don't like to say that because I know that me saying it probably doesn't help Brendan Gale, and also I think that you know it's been. I think I first wrote about this in 2019. For some reason, the AFL doesn't think that he is the right man.
Aren't as bullish.
But maybe he'll go in and go through the process and.
I think all of those people, if you picked any of them out, they'll do a fantastic job.
With the right people around
But you've got to put the right people around him. I think it's a far bigger issue than replacing Gillon McLachlan, because Gill has a skill set that is irreplaceable by weight of his personality. Doesn't mean he's the greatest thing on two legs, but Gill could float into different meetings, pick up 2 sentences and pick it up and run. He's got a great charisma. He was great with politicians, business people. A fantastic CEO, and the next job will be a beauty for him. But trying to replace that person, no. You've got to come up with, let them be individuals and fill people around them.